everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Books Beside My Bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. This is the wrap up for week 1 of the Amazing Readathon, and I'm on Team Romance and I've had an excellent reading week, which is a complete turnaround from the last entire month. So we are going to be talking about 12 books that I read for both the main prompts and also the sightseeing prompts for the readathon. The Amazing Readathon is a month-long readathon being hosted by Brie and a bunch of other amazing people. There are different teams, you are competing against each other and you are trying to earn points for your team based on the amazing race. And I am both incredibly stressed out by this readathon, but also finding it very useful because the prompts are actually quite open-ended and I have set myself a few sort of internal challenges around reading books that I already own, not stressing out over completing everything. So I think the best way to approach the readathon is at your own pace and in your own style, and honestly that has let me read 12 books this week. So we're going to try and get through all of the books fairly quickly. There are quite a few rereads in here. Stop 1 for the Amazing Readathon was Toronto and we had to read a book that we did not buy. For that I read Ascendent by Tal Bauer. This was a gift from Shae, who's one of the producers for the readathon this month. And this is the offshoot of the Executive Office series. So this is the Executive Power series and it follows Sasha and Sergei, who were major side characters in the Enemies of the State series. And in this one, Sasha is really grappling with PTSD from the events and everything that happened in the previous series, and he is a Russian Air Force soldier who was outed by his teammates and nearly killed, and then he fell for the president of Russia, and then obviously in that series they were working together to try and save the world, and now Sasha is having to deal with everything that happened in that book. And just like the other series, this was fast-paced, it was tense, but I do really love these two side characters and I'm looking forward to picking up Stars, which is the follow-up, hopefully sometime this month, but that is a much longer book. I will just say, content warnings, homophobia, there is some body horror, there is a group that is trying to release deadly bioagents and viruses, so just beware of that. But there is no third act breakup in this book. Then I did some sightseeing. So for the prompt to read one person on the cover and 400 points, I read Sugar Sugar by Lady Marie. This is a very short novella that follows a sugar daddy, sugar baby relationship that progresses into something more. It was really fun and enjoyable. It was quite a light-hearted read, and while I don't normally enjoy that sugar daddy, sugar baby dynamic, it worked for me in this one. And I loved it because the characters were 30 and 52 and were just lovely. This was also my Buzzwordathon pick for the month as well. So yay, I've hit that challenge as well. Then for the sightseeing prompt to read a book with less than 1,000 ratings on Goodreads, and this was 500 points, I read Rivals by Jeff Adams, who is an author I've been meaning to try for a while. He is a queer author. And this is a novella that just hit the 50-page mark on the edition that I had for the readathon, so it counted. It's an Thanksgiving holiday romance between two former hockey rivals who come back home at the same time. They were hockey rivals while they were playing sort of through their teen years, and they reconnect and they fall in love, and it was honestly just the sweetest thing. Then for the sightseeing prompt to read a book that I've owned for longer than a year, which was worth 100 points, I read The Heir by Nana Malone, which is the prequel to the Gentleman Rogues series. This is a billionaire romance series, I believe, and it is about Saffron, who it's her birthday and she's being dragged out to a nightclub for her birthday, and that's not her normal scene. And there is, I'm pretty sure, a guy who does not take no for an answer, and Lachlan has to step in. And I believe the first book in the series is their full-length story, but this is sort of their initial meeting. Content warning though in this one for racism and attempted sexual assault. So apparently while I was filming this, I totally forgot one of the sightseeing prompts that I read, which was Work for It by Talia Hibbert. This was the sightseeing prompt for Brie's a Brie favourite, or a book that Brie gave 5 stars. And this is an romance by Talia Hibbert, and it is about Olu and Griffin. It is an age gap romance, and Olu finds himself sort of at a loss with his life and ends up in this small town and crosses paths with Griffin, who manages one of the local orchard farm places. And the two of them butt heads initially and then eventually begin to pursue a relationship together, and it's all complicated by lots of different things. So this one does have content warnings in it for depression and mental health issues. It also has a content warning for suicide, death of a parent, and also a forced outing. So be kind to yourself when you're going into it. But it was a really interesting read and I enjoyed it. It's very different to some of the other Talia Hibbert books that I've read. Then for the sightseeing prompt to read a book set in a school, I reread The Headmaster by Tiffany Reisz. I forgot to count this in my rereads. There's a lot of rereads in this one. And I'd forgotten how much I loved this book. It is so awesome. You have Gwen, who has left a really bad relationship, is driving, she's trying to get to a new state to start. She's a teacher, she wants to get a new job and start over. And she stumbles across this very prestigious but very old-fashioned boarding school. And that she's involved in a bit of an accident, and then when she wakes up, she's already in the school. The headmaster has found her and brought her in just to make sure that she's okay, and she wakes up and she ends up asking for a trial period at the school. This is an all-boys boarding school. Everything is old school. And we, the reader, go, something's not quite right. And even Gwen kind of goes, this is strange. But Edwin, the headmaster, is awesome, and he's deeply passionate and loyal to his students, and his students are loyal to him and to all of the staff. The further on you get into it, like there is, if you haven't read it, there is a twist. And I really can't talk about more than that with this book, because the twist is so worth it. Tiffany Reisz is an excellent author, and the way that this story is crafted, this is one of my, I don't like reading teacher books. I have a very small number of teacher books that I actually enjoy, and this one I just loved. If you think about the dedication level of the students, this is like Dead Poet Society level dedication of students to their headmaster and their teachers, and it's awesome. Please go read it. It's great. Then we had the second leg, which was Buenos Aires, and we had to read a dual POV book. And for that, I read The Revenge Agenda by Saxon James. This is book 3 in the Accidental Love series. It is a queer romance series following a group of housemates or house share mates. And in this case, we have Rush, who is seeing a guy, and he gets all dressed up for him for the holidays and goes to his house, and the door is open, and what he discovers is that the guy that he's been in love with for a year is actually engaged and has been engaged to someone else for about 5 years. And then he obviously runs away from there because the whole thing is highly confronting and traumatic. Rush has ADHD and is a really sensitive soul. And the next time that he goes to work, he finds that his new boss is the ex-fiancé of the guy that he was in love with. And that obviously complicates things. And eventually Rush and Hunter enter into this idea of trying to get revenge on their ex, because he is continuing to pursue Rush. You have a really toxic ex in this one who gaslights to no end. But Rush and Hunter's relationship is wonderful. Hunter is at first really taken aback by the way that Rush manages his ADHD. There is a discussion in here around medication or not medication for ADHD, and there's a author's note from Saxon James saying the book is not meant to be pro or anti-medication one way or the other. This is about how everyone has a choice, and Rush has made particular choices and at times is revisiting his choices depending on how things are going in his life. I just love them. They were absolutely precious beans, and I continue to enjoy this series because they're just really fun. There is no third act breakup in this one, which is also lovely, and I can't wait for the next book. I didn't even mention the fact that one of the funniest things is that when they're in the office, Rush has bought Hunter this plant, and they keep sending the plant back to each other's desks with puns on it. I love that. Then I did some more sightseeing, and I wanted to find a book that was published before 2001. So I ended up not reading a romance book, so I didn't get romance points for this, but it is the 27th Annual African Hippopotamus Race by Maurice Lurie, which is an Australian middle fiction novel. People, this is how long middle fiction novels used to be. So I was recommended this last year by one of my literacy trainers, and I have been meaning to read it ever since. So I finally picked it up. It is about Edward, who comes from a long line of hippopotamuses who have entered into the African hippopotamus race, and this year he is determined to participate, except he is one of 84 hippopotamuses trying to swim a really long distance, and he faces some pretty tough competition. It is about his training and his persistence and the friends he makes along the way. It was a really entertaining little book. Then I reread Last Light by Claire Kent. This was for the sightseeing prompt recommended by a friend, because the first time I read it was recommended by Heather, so I'm still counting it as recommended by Heather, and it was the book that she recommended as one of her host favorites as well. So all around, this counts. Since I read this recently, this is a dystopian romance set sort of in the near future after the Earth has been hit by an asteroid. And while it hasn't wiped everything out, it has created conditions where the world basically fell apart. Infrastructure's down, everything that existed prior, technology doesn't work, the satellites are out, etc. And so everyone is just surviving. And this is an age gap romance between two people who knew each other in their previous lives. They lived in the same town, but under any other circumstances would not have connected and fallen in love the way that they do, because Lainey is 21, Travis is in his 30s, and they both meet at the start of the book when they are finally leaving their town, because everyone who was tying them there, people who couldn't travel, have passed on. So Lainey was caring, I think, for her grandmother. Travis was caring for his 5-year-old daughter, and both of those people have died. And they are trying to reconnect with everyone else from their town who has already left and gone to a place that has a little bit more safety. And along the way, they have to connect and team up and travel together. And this forced proximity situation, this reliance on each other and this trust that they have to build with one another is what leads to their relationship development. I love the way that their relationship develops. I love the life that they build for each other throughout this book and how they manage to survive. And there is an awesome dog in here as well. But just be warned, there is discussions around death, particularly of a child, as well as everyone else. And, you know, that constant sort of tension of how are you going to survive when you could be attacked? And that does happen fairly frequently within the series. Then for the sightseeing prompt, that is a book that involves a game. I read Role Playing by Cathy Yardley. This was another reread, and this one obviously features an online role-playing game, so there's the game element. You guys know that this is one of my favorite books of last year. It is a Gen X romance between 48-year-old Maggie and 50-year-old Aiden, who meet while playing in an online guild. Maggie's son has just left for college and she is entirely a hermit. Maggie is my spirit animal, is all I can say. And she presents herself as a much older woman. She thinks she's playing against college kids. And so her handle is Bogwitch and Aiden's handle is Otter. And so they meet through this game, and then eventually when they meet in real life, they're shocked to find that they are very similar in age and that they get along so well. And it's a really beautiful relationship that develops throughout the story. Aiden discovers that he is demisexual. He's always known how he's felt, but he's never really been able to put a name to it. He's also bisexual. Maggie is super chill on that front. She is the one who helps him to understand that and to give him some starter knowledge that he then goes, you know, to investigate further. Aiden is a nurse who has taken time off from and sold out of his business, working in hospice care to originally care for his father who had cancer and passed away. And now he is taking care of his mother, who is toxic AF. And to top things off, his brother married his ex-fiancée. And so there is a lot of tension in his family. Anyone will tell you, like, this whole book is brilliant. It is fantastic from start to finish, the way that these two characters connect and relate. But anyone will tell you the best scene in this book is when Maggie goes with Aiden to one of Aiden's family's wedding. His family unleash. There is a forced outing in this book as well, just to be aware of. But Maggie is ready to throw down against his family, ready to literally climb across the table. She has to be held back in defense of him. And it's the first time that he has ever had anyone defend him. And it is the scene that lives rent-free in my brain from this book, because Maggie might be little, she might be a hermit, but she's fierce and she is protective. And that whole scene is just amazing, along with everything else in the book. There's also some stuff in there about Maggie and her ex and her ex's relationship with her son and all of that sort of stuff that comes into the book. But at the core of it, it's just this crazy book about these two people falling in love in their 40s and 50s and just being the most awesome people around. And then the final book that I read or reread for this readathon, which was for the sightseeing prompt to read a book with 5 words in the title, was The Rest of the Story by Tal Bauer. And you might be going, Steph, haven't you read this book enough? The answer is no. No, I have not. Because I spent the entire time reading this book on a Friday night, smiling and just, I was giddy while I was rereading this book. For those of you who don't know, who've only joined my channel this year and in the last couple of months and were not here for the escapades of me reading this book 7 times in a year last year, this is my favorite book of all time, or my favorite romance book of all time. And it is utterly delightful. It is a queer hockey romance by a queer author. And we follow Morgan and Shae. Morgan is a seasoned NHL player who has just been traded to the worst team in the NHL. And when he gets there, he finds out that the captain and the coaches have basically been running this little abusive fiefdom. And that's the reason why the team is basically dead. And the captain is physically and sexually abusive of all of the rookies. And Morgan comes in and basically cleans up shop. And between him and the new VP of the team, they get the team sorted. And it is about how they rebuild. It is about how they as a team come together and they stick together. And it is also Morgan falling for the oldest rookie on the team, a player who's gone through the NCAA route, and his name is Shae. And the two of them are just absolutely precious. Their journey is not an easy one, because Morgan doesn't think that he's sticking around after a year. And Shae is someone who has his own convictions and strong feelings about what he isn't willing to do in a relationship. And it was kind of nice to see that from a male perspective, not that we get Shae's perspective, but to actually have a male go, actually, you know what, I don't want to be intimate with someone else fully until I know that this is something that's solid, which I just appreciate, because everyone's experience and what everyone is willing to accept or do or participate in a relationship is their own journey, right? And I don't think we often get, particularly men, saying, well, hang on a second, I actually don't want to move fast. I want this to be slow and I want this to be something that I'm sure of because I think I'm falling in love with you, but I need to be sure. Given everything that they go through, I think that's great. Heavy content warnings in this book. This entire book basically deals with survivorship. As I said, there is physical and sexual abuse of characters in the book. There is also a violent car collision that results in injury of one of the characters. There is the breakdown of the team, of people within the team as a result of that, bringing up all of the past trauma. But through it all, you have a group of characters who just stick together. They look after each other, they protect each other, and they are just a group of people that I would love to meet in real life. Like, I would love to be their friends. I would like Morgan to be my best friend, please, because he is a leader without ever believing that he is. He just always tries to do the right thing. He tries to be a good guy, even though he doesn't think that he has leadership quality, and he does in spades. I love this book with my whole heart. I don't know how many more times I can talk about this book, but undoubtedly this will not be the last time that you hear me talk about it. So I also realized I forgot to talk about another book, and I'm really tired and the editing process has taken me a while, so I'm just going to be really brief. Another sightseeing book that I read was Pucking Ever After Volume 2. I was immersive reading this with the audiobook because I did receive the graphic audio and I was just waiting for the opportunity to pick it up. This is a series of short stories and novellas that take place or in between Pucking Around and Pucking Wild, and there are content warnings in the front of the book. There is a lot of discussion around homophobia, but also around pregnancy, childbirth, relatively safe childbirth, but also one where there are a lot of complications. Just be aware of that if you're going into it. If you've read the series, you'll know this. It's just revisiting all the characters. My favorite stories in the collection are No Exit, which is Jake's story, which is him and dealing with his family who are quite homophobic and really don't understand the polyamorous nature of his relationship with Rachel and Caleb and Ilmari. And it also highlights the relationship between Jake and Ilmari really well. And then also The Dentist, which is Caleb and Ilmari's relationship and the development of that over time, because at the start or at the end of Pucking Around, they're a family unit. They all love and care for one another, but there is sort of a distance between Caleb and Ilmari, and this is about them dealing with it. And it was just amazing because it shows how relationships don't have to be static, how you can change from one thing to another over time, because Ilmari doesn't consider himself bisexual in Pucking Around, whereas The Dentist shows us that, you know, over time, the connection that you have with people means that labels don't necessarily mean the same thing. And I think that that was a really great way to show that development. I think Emily Rath does that really well. She does show that, you know, relationships change over time and it's okay. So I love this series and I will continue to read it. And so those are all the books that I read for the first week of the Amazing Readathon. I had such a good time. We have our new leg of the Reisz that has dropped, so I'm pretty excited. I know what I'm going to read for it, and then I'm hoping to do a bunch of sightseeing prompts this weekend because it is a long weekend and I want to read. In the comments, I'd love to know if you've read any of these books or if you're planning on picking any of them up, or if you are participating in the Amazing Readathon, what was something that you really enjoyed reading in the past week. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a pink heart emoji for Team Romance. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you're on the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.